As the golden hues of sunset bathed the New York sky, Ethan Caldwell stood before a towering mirror in his opulent penthouse, his gaze sharp as a general poised for battle. At 52, he still carried the aura of a man born to shape destinies. His bespoke tuxedo clung to his frame, every stitch crafted as if by the hands of master artisans, accentuating his commanding stature. The Manhattan skyline stretched beyond the floor-to-ceiling glass windows, twinkling like a kingdom bowing before him. His silver-streaked hair was meticulously groomed, not a strand out of place, and every detail on him, from the gleaming gold cufflinks to the mirror-polished black leather shoes, radiated undeniable wealth and power. Ethan didn't just look like a man who owned the city. He believed he was its very embodiment. Beside him, Sophia Loren, 26, glided past like a summer breeze, her fiery red sequined gown hugging her curves, sparkling under the crystal chandelier's glow. Her eyes, sharp as a blade, brimmed with ambition and the confidence of someone born to shine. Once a fashion influencer with millions of followers, Sophia had now stepped into the world of high society, where she commanded every gaze. Each step was a performance, every gesture calculated to make the world turn its head. Tonight, she didn't just want to attend the year's most prestigious charity gala. She wanted to dominate it, turning every camera lens into her personal audience. Her red gown burned like a flame, flaunting her boldness and her hunger to be seen, as if she were a star awaiting her moment to explode across the sky. Ethan glanced at their reflection in the mirror, a formidable duo impossible to ignore. He smirked, a self-assured grin that had once made business rivals tremble and reporters clamor. She looks like she was born to stand by my side, he thought, his eyes tracing Sophia as she adjusted her sparkling diamond necklace. To Ethan, she wasn't just his new girlfriend. She was a symbol of reinvention, a younger, more radiant version of the past he'd left behind. His ex-wife, who once stood beside him in rooms brimming with power, was now a faint memory. He had chosen Sophia, whom he believed to be the perfect upgrade, a new queen for his empire. In Ethan's mind, tonight's gala would be the stage to flaunt his triumph, a man who still held the world in his grip, defying time and past choices. The penthouse, with its white marble interiors and million-dollar artworks, stood as a testament to Ethan's success. Every corner was designed to impress, from the rare wine collection to the paintings hung on walls, once auctioned at Sotheby's. This wasn't just a home, it was his throne, where he plotted conquests and celebrated victories. Tonight, he would step out from here to attend the Aurora Foundation's gala, an event not just for the wealthy, but a crucible where empires were fortified, alliances forged, and names etched into history. Ethan paid no mind to the rumors of a mysterious donor who had shaken the foundation. He only knew the room would be filled with those who once bowed to him. And with Sophia by his side, he would make them marvel once more. Sophia, standing before the mirror, smoothed her golden hair, pinned high, her gaze flicking to Ethan with a knowing smile. Tonight, all of New York will talk about us, she thought, though she kept the words unspoken. She understood the weight of this moment, a chance to transform from an influencer into an icon, from a beautiful face into a name etched in memory. She had mastered the art of commanding camera flashes, of making heads turn, and she believed that beside Ethan, she would achieve it. Her red sequined gown wasn't just attire. It was a declaration, a challenge to anyone who dared question her place. For Sophia, the gala wasn't merely an event. It was a battlefield, and she was armed to win. Ethan turned, checking his Patek Philippe watch one last time, a timepiece worth as much as a car. His pulse quickened, not from nerves, but from the thrill of a man about to enter an arena he believed he would rule. In his mind, vivid images flashed, camera lights, applause, and powerful handshakes. He had attended this gala for years, always the center of attention, always sought after. This year, with Sophia beside him, he was certain he'd shine even brighter. He spared no thought for his ex-wife, who once stood by him in similar moments. She belonged to the past, a chapter he'd close to write a new, more dazzling story. As they stepped out of the penthouse, Manhattan's cool air enveloped them. The doorman bowed, and the sleek black Rolls-Royce waited below. Ethan offered his hand to Sophia, feeling the softness of her skin through her silk gloves. She smiled, her eyes gleaming as if glimpsing a radiant future. They entered the car, the door closing with a soft thud, and in that moment, Ethan felt invincible. The city was his, the gala his stage, and Sophia the proof of his triumph. He had no inkling that, in just a few hours, everything he held true would unravel, and the woman he'd left behind would emerge as the figure commanding the world's gaze. Beneath the dazzling glow of Manhattan's lights, a sleek black Rolls-Royce glided to a stop before the Waldorf Astoria, where the soft radiance of white lanterns mingled with the rich crimson of the sprawling red carpet, beckoning like a siren's call from a world of opulence. Ethan Caldwell stepped out, his presence commanding, like a king returning to his realm. He extended his hand, and Sophia Laurent, radiant as a blazing flame, gently placed her silk-gloved fingers in his palm. Instantly, every eye turned to her. Photographers, like hunters chasing light, called out in unison, "Sophia, over here! Give us a smile!" Flashes erupted, transforming the moment into a dazzling storm of brilliance. Ethan lifted his chin, his lips curling into the proud smile that had graced Forbes covers, humbled business rivals, and captivated reporters. Tonight, he was more than a guest. He was a symbol of power, with Sophia's luminous aura blazing beside him. The Waldorf Astoria, with its majestic marble columns and warm golden light, was the perfect stage for the Aurora Foundation's annual gala. This was no ordinary charity event. It was an arena for billionaires with razor-sharp smiles, politicians with calculated handshakes, and stars who knew how to make the world turn their way. The Aurora Gala was where empires were solidified, alliances forged, and names etched deep into the memory of high society. This year, the event carried a different air, shrouded in an enigmatic mist. Whispers spread of an anonymous donor who had poured a colossal sum into the foundation, transforming its mission from flashy philanthropy to a profound vision, all in a single night. News outlets buzzed, bloggers murmured, but no one knew the true identity of the figure behind this revolution. Ethan, however, paid no heed to the gossip. He wasn't here to unravel mysteries. He was here to dominate. As Sophia stepped from the car, her fiery red sequined gown shimmered like a constellation, clinging to her form with bold cuts, as if tailored to defy every gaze. She tilted her head slightly, letting a single golden curl fall free, and flashed a smile honed through countless hours before a mirror. Photographers jostled, lenses swiveling to capture her every move. Sophia wasn't just beautiful. She was a phenomenon, a flame that knew how to spread. For her, tonight wasn't merely a party. It was a chance to ascend from a familiar face on social media to an icon of the elite. She wanted her name on every headline, her image in every Who's Who article in New York. Standing beside Ethan, the man once dubbed the King of Manhattan, she believed she was inching closer to that dream. Ethan, his hand resting lightly on Sophia's waist, felt the heat of the crowd's attention. He reveled in it, the camera flashes, the calls of his name, the sensation of the world watching. His smile wasn't just confidence. It was a weapon, honed over decades of conquering boardrooms, sealing multi-million-dollar deals, and striding through rooms thick with power. He had attended this gala for years, always the focal point, always pursued. But tonight, with Sophia at his side, he felt a fresh thrill. She was proof of his reinvention, an upgrade from the past he'd left behind. His ex-wife, who once stood quietly by his side at similar events, was now a dim shadow in his memory. Ethan had chosen Sophia, youthful, radiant, unafraid to flaunt her ambition, to replace what he deemed outdated. In his mind, she was his new queen, and together they would make the room burn with envy. As they ascended the red carpet, the light from the high-hung white lanterns bathed them in a halo. Sophia leaned closer, her voice a sweet whisper laced with intent. "Ready to make the world gasp?" Her eyes sparkled, as if she could already see the headlines, the social media posts, the murmurs of awe. Ethan nodded, a small gesture brimming with assurance. His heart pounded, not from nerves, but from the exhilaration of knowing he was about to enter an arena where he always triumphed. The room inside the hotel, with its gilded walls and sparkling champagne flutes, awaited him. He envisioned powerful handshakes, envious glances, and accolades from those who once revered him. With Sophia by his side, he was certain tonight would mark a new chapter in his storied legacy. But as they drew closer to the entrance, a strange sensation flickered through Ethan, like a cold breeze cutting through a summer's warmth. He brushed it aside, chalking it up to the afterglow of flashes and cheers. He couldn't know that, at this very moment, an invisible trap had been set, not with words or overt actions, but with the razor-sharp silence of someone he'd once underestimated. Somewhere in the resplendent room ahead, a figure waited, not to confront, but to remind him that the kingdom he thought he owned could crumble with a single nod. Ethan, with his proud smile and Sophia's brilliance beside him, climbed the steps, oblivious to the truth that tonight would not belong to him. The marble steps leading to the entrance of the Waldorf Astoria shimmered under the gentle glow of white lanterns, a pathway ascending to the pinnacle of power. Ethan Caldwell climbed them, shoulders squared, each step echoing with unwavering confidence, as if he were striding into his own kingdom. Sophia Laurent, resplendent in her red sequined gown, clung tightly to his arm, her smile a precious gem reflecting the flashes from the photographers below. But as they neared the massive glass doors, two security guards in black suits barred the way, their faces cold as stone, hands clutching clipboards with tightly secured lists. One of them, tall with a piercing gaze, locked eyes with Ethan, waiting. Ethan paused, flashing the proud smile that had once made business rivals quiver. "Ethan Caldwell, +1, he said, his voice deep and resolute, as if his name alone could unlock any door. The guard lowered his gaze, scanning the list, his finger tracing slowly over each line. Then he looked up, his expression unyielding. "I'm sorry, sir," he said, his tone flat, like a verdict delivered. "Your name isn't on the list." The air around them seemed to freeze. The clamor of the red carpet, the photographers' calls, the laughter of other guests, faded abruptly, leaving only a razor-sharp silence between Ethan and the guard. Sophia, at his side, froze. The radiant smile on her lips, perfected to always dazzle, stiffened, like a painting marred by a misplaced stroke. She blinked, her lips parting slightly, but no words came. Ethan felt a surge of heat rising to his neck, blood rushing to his face, yet he maintained an outward calm, like a seasoned actor on a grand stage. He furrowed his brow, his voice sharper, tinged with arrogance. "Check again. I'm Ethan Caldwell. I've attended this gala for 6 years straight. There's clearly a mistake." The guard didn't budge, his steel-cold eyes devoid of emotion. "This year's event is strictly for pre-approved guests," he repeated, each word a hammer striking Ethan's pride. "Your name isn't on the list." Ethan's chest tightened, but he stood firm, like a warrior refusing to acknowledge a wound. He cleared his throat, leaning forward, his voice lower but laced with pressure. "Call Michael Thornton, the chairman of the Aurora Foundation's board. He knows me. He'll sort this out." The guard, unmoved, gave a slight shake of his head. "Sir, I can't do that. Please step aside to allow other guests through." The words, though polite, cut like a blade, slicing through Ethan's confidence. He sensed the eyes of those around him, photographers, approaching guests, shifting toward him, not with admiration, but with curiosity laced with amusement. Sophia, sensing the tension, let out a forced laugh, trying to salvage the moment. "Surely it's just a small mix-up," she said, her voice high-pitched, as if convincing herself. "Can you check the donor list? Ethan's one of the foundation's biggest contributors." She leaned in, her smile straining to appear natural, but her eyes betrayed a glimmer of panic. The guard, still fixed on his clipboard, met her plea with an icy glance, as if her words were mere whispers in the wind. "I've checked, ma'am. There's no Mr. Caldwell on any list." The finality in his tones silenced Sophia, her hand tightening on Ethan's arm, nails digging into the fabric of his costly tuxedo. A chill ran down Ethan's spine, not from the cool Manhattan evening, but from a vague premonition, as if something far greater was unfolding. He opened his mouth to protest again, but his gaze drifted past the guard to the glass doors. Through them, he glimpsed the radiant glow of the ballroom, where champagne flutes sparkled and powerful smiles were exchanged. But what stopped his heart wasn't the lavish scene. It was a figure, standing on a distant balcony, silent yet commanding. She, the woman he thought belonged to the past, gazed down, her eyes sharp as an unspoken proclamation. Ethan stood rooted, his breath slowing, as if time itself had paused. Sophia, noticing the shift in him, turned, her voice trembling. "Ethan, what's wrong?" But he didn't answer. The sounds, the photographer's shouts, the crowd's murmurs, dissolved. Only the truth before him remained, vivid and inescapable. The guard, still standing there, cleared his throat again, his tone now edged with impatience. "Sir, please step aside." But Ethan didn't move. For the first time in years, he felt as though he no longer controlled the stage he believed was his own. The glass doors ahead, gleaming under the lights, were no longer just an entrance to a party. They marked a divide between the world Ethan thought he ruled and a reality he wasn't ready to face. Other guests began to advance, those whose names were on the list, passing him without hesitation, as if he were a mere shadow. Sophia tugged gently at his sleeve, her voice almost a whisper. "We can't stay here forever." But Ethan remained still, his eyes locked on the figure on the balcony, his heart pounding with a feeling he couldn't name. Not anger, not shame, but a foreboding that everything he'd built was beginning to crack. In the fleeting moment when the white lanterns flickered above the marble steps of the Waldorf Astoria, Ethan Caldwell felt the world around him slow to a crawl. The guard had just denied him entry, his cold voice echoing like a sentencing. But it wasn't the public humiliation or the prying eyes of the photographers that stopped Ethan's heart. It was something deeper, more profound, as if fate had spun an invisible web around him. Then, his gaze drifted upward, past the shimmering glass doors, to a figure standing on the balcony overlooking the ballroom. She stood there, motionless, draped in a sleek black silk gown that embraced her form with effortless elegance. Her hair was swept up, a few delicate strands falling softly, framed by the golden glow of the ballroom's light, encircling her like a halo. Olivia Monroe, the ex-wife Ethan had left behind to chase Sophia Loren's dazzling allure, was no longer the faint shadow in his memory. She was a queen, exuding a commanding presence and untouchable strength, as if the entire opulent room below existed to honor her. Every gesture, her poised stance, her piercing gaze, carried the weight of someone who had emerged from darkness and been reborn in light. Ethan's breath caught, as if the air had been sucked from his chest. Their eyes met across the distance, through the glass, through the years he thought he'd erased. Olivia didn't smile, didn't wave, didn't show the slightest hint of surprise or emotion. She simply looked at him, her gaze deep as a still lake, yet beneath it surged the power of a storm. Then, slowly, as if time bent to her will, she nodded once, a small, almost imperceptible gesture, but heavy with meaning, like a silent proclamation. With that, she turned away, her graceful silhouette vanishing into the ballroom's radiant light, as if Ethan were merely a fleeting memory, a dim streak of light in her story. Ethan stood frozen, his feet rooted to the steps. The clamor of the red carpet, the photographer's shouts, the crowd's whispers, dissolved, leaving only the thundering pulse in his chest. A cold, hollow emptiness spread through him, as if everything he'd built, his reputation, his power, his confidence, was crumbling before his eyes. Sophia, beside him, gripped his arm tightly, her nails digging into the fabric of his costly tuxedo. "What the hell is going on, Ethan?" Her voice trembled, a mix of panic and anger, as if she were grasping at a reality slipping away. But Ethan didn't respond. He couldn't. His mouth was dry, and every word he'd once used to sway boardrooms or charm crowds now felt meaningless. The guard, still stationed before the glass doors, cleared his throat, his tone now edged with impatience. "Sir, please step aside for the other guests." The words, though courteous, struck like a final blade, severing the fragile thread of hope Ethan had unconsciously clung to. He stared at the glass doors, where the ballroom's lights spilled out, reflecting his own image, a man who once believed himself invincible, now just a solitary figure adrift. From within, applause rang out, strong and steady, like a chorus heralding Olivia, as if the world were exalting her while erasing him from the stage he'd once ruled. Ethan remained still, his eyes fixed on where Olivia had disappeared. Her image on the balcony seared into his mind, not because she had changed, but because she was no longer the woman he'd known. Gone was the quiet figure who stood behind his spotlight, the dutiful wife who accepted a supporting role. She was a force, a center he couldn't reach, and that nod, simple yet ruthless, was a reminder that he had underestimated her. Sophia, sensing his stillness, yanked at his sleeve, her voice nearly a whisper. "Ethan, we can't just stand here." But he didn't move. It felt as though the world had slammed a door in his face, and he held no key to open it. Other guests began to advance, those whose names graced the list, passing Ethan and Sophia without hesitation. They laughed and chatted, their gowns and tuxedos resplendent, as if oblivious to the collapse unfolding beside them. A stylish couple glided by, the woman casting a fleeting, curious glance at Ethan before quickly looking away, as if he were an insignificant detail. The photographers, poised to capture Ethan's triumphant moment, now turned their lenses to the new arrivals, leaving him in shadow. The applause from the ballroom swelled again, louder this time, a resounding affirmation that the gala pressed on without him. A chill coursed down Ethan's spine, not from Manhattan's evening air, but from a truth dawning within him. Olivia hadn't just attended the gala. She orchestrated it. That nod wasn't a random gesture. It was a message, an acknowledgement that she had surpassed him. Not by shouting or seeking revenge, but by becoming a stronger version of herself. For the first time in years, Ethan felt small, as if the kingdom he thought he owned now belonged to another. And in that moment, with the glass doors sealed and the ballroom's light blazing, he realized this wasn't his stage. It was Olivia's, and she had claimed it with a single nod. The Rolls-Royce glided smoothly through Manhattan's glittering streets, but inside, the air was heavy as lead, stifling every sound. Ethan Caldwell sat motionless in the back seat, his gaze fixed on the window, where the city's lights reflected like shards of a shattered dream. Beside him, Sophia Laurent swiped her fingers across her phone screen, its pale blue glow illuminating her face, now etched with anger and bewilderment. Her once iconic red sequined gown, a symbol of confidence, now seemed out of place, like a fading flame. "She did this," Sophia muttered, her voice sharp yet trembling, eyes glued to the screen. "Olivia, this wasn't a mistake. She wanted to humiliate you." She emphasized each word, as if trying to convince herself this was merely a plot, not a true collapse. Ethan didn't respond. He couldn't. Sophia's words rang out, but they passed over him like a cold wind, leaving no trace. In his mind, the image of Olivia Munro on the balcony replayed, vivid and agonizing. Her black silk gown, her serene yet commanding gaze, and that nod. A simple, ruthless gesture, like a blade slicing through the armor of pride he'd built over years. He'd once thought Olivia weak, a woman unable to match his blazing ambition. He'd left her, trading her for Sophia, youthful, radiant, an upgrade he believed would solidify his status among the elite. But now, enveloped by the car's darkness, Ethan realized he'd made a catastrophic mistake. Olivia hadn't just survived his betrayal, she'd forged a new empire, unshakable and untouchable, while he was losing everything that once defined him. The penthouse door closed behind them, the lock's click echoing like a final sentence. The apartment, with its cold white marble and million-dollar paintings on the walls, had once been a monument to victory, a place where Ethan hosted lavish parties and sealed world-changing deals. Now, it felt empty and alien, like an abandoned palace. Light from the crystal chandeliers spilled down, but instead of celebrating success, it only underscored his solitude. Ethan walked slowly to the bar, pouring a glass of whiskey, the amber liquid swirling in his hand. He stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, gazing down at the Manhattan skyline, once his kingdom. The skyscrapers sparkled, but their light now seemed to belong to someone else, to Olivia. He took a sip of whiskey, its bitter burn sliding down his throat, but it did nothing to ease the ache spreading through his chest. The image of Olivia on the balcony clung to his mind. She hadn't just attended the gala, she was its heart, a force he couldn't touch. He'd once mocked her quiet nature, believing she lacked the strength to stand in high society's glare. He was wrong. Olivia didn't need camera flashes or headlines to prove herself. She'd built power from the shadows, and that nod, icy, laden with meaning, was a declaration that she'd surpassed him, not through clamor but through silent resolve. Sophia, still seated on the white leather sofa, kept scrolling her phone, her face now twisted with rage. "She planned this," she said, her voice high and nearly a shout. "Olivia wanted us humiliated in front of the whole city." She flung the phone onto the cushion, her eyes blazing as if to scorch everything around her. But Ethan remained silent. He couldn't argue, couldn't comfort her, because deep down, he knew Sophia was right. This wasn't a random error. Olivia, with her deadly calm, had set an invisible trap, and he'd walked right into it, unaware. Her nod wasn't just a moment. It was the culmination of a long-crafted plan, a wordless retribution. He turned from the window, the whiskey glass now cold in his hand. The city outside still dazzled, but it was no longer his playground. The whispers had begun. He could feel them. Those who once admired him, who vied to shake his hand in boardrooms and galas, were now murmuring about Olivia, about her nod, her commanding presence, and the moment Ethan Caldwell was turned away at the door of the kingdom he'd once ruled. He imagined the texts being sent, the social media posts, the gossip in upscale bars. They weren't talking about his multi-million-dollar investments or his past triumphs. They were talking about her, about the nod, about his downfall. Ethan moved slowly through the penthouse, his eyes grazing the luxurious items, the rare wine collection, the Picasso on the wall, the Patek Philippe watch on the table. All had once symbolized his invincibility, but now they were mere objects, unable to hide the truth that his light was fading. He paused at a small photo, forgotten on a bookshelf. A moment from the past when Olivia stood beside him, her smile gentle yet vibrant. He'd once thought she wasn't strong enough to keep up with him, but now he saw her strength lay not in noise, but in quiet resilience. He held the whiskey glass but didn't drink. Standing in the frigid penthouse, he felt for the first time that he was no longer the city's king. Olivia had claimed his throne, not by confrontation, but by becoming a stronger version of herself. And as the whispers of Ethan Caldwell's downfall began to echo, he knew this was only the start of a storm he couldn't stop. While Ethan Caldwell sank into the cold shadows of his desolate penthouse, Olivia Monroe awoke each morning in her modest apartment, where dawn's gentle light slipped through the windows, soft as a whispered promise of new beginnings. Her home held no marble grandeur or glittering chandeliers, yet every corner pulsed with her essence. From the abstract painting she'd crafted on the wall to the weathered wooden bookshelf brimming with cherished books, their pages creased from long nights of reading and reflection. After the divorce, Olivia didn't crumble, didn't let pain or betrayal consume her. Instead, she quietly rebuilt, not to exact revenge on the ex-husband who abandoned her, but to rediscover the woman she'd lost in the darkness of their marriage. Nestled on a quiet Manhattan street, Olivia's apartment was the cradle of her rebirth. No bowing doormen or gilded walls graced its space, only natural light flooding through windows and a simple wooden table where she jotted notes for her charitable projects. Every item in her home, from the blue upholstered armchair to the small potted plant on the windowsill, was chosen with care, a testament to this being her sanctuary, unshaped by anyone else. Olivia didn't need opulence to feel whole. She found joy in the simple, the chirping of birds on her balcony, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee, and the liberating freedom of living true to herself. After parting ways with Ethan, Olivia didn't chase glittering parties or seek the spotlight to mend her wounds. She chose a different path, quiet but profound. She began working with charities, spending hours in community centers, listening to the stories of women striving to rebuild their lives, of children dreaming of brighter futures. She organized food drives, supported education programs, and personally guided young people to uncover their potential. Olivia sought no applause. She toiled in the shadows, where small, steadfast acts could transform lives. Yet it was this very devotion that sent her influence rippling outward, like waves across a still lake, silent but unstoppable. No one could have guessed that Olivia, the woman Ethan once dismissed as weak and unable to keep up with ambition, would emerge as the enigmatic benefactor behind the Aurora Foundation's transformation. With a vision of justice and hope, she poured a vast fortune into the foundation, not to boast, but to reshape its mission. Under her guidance, Aurora shifted from ostentatious charity to programs with real impact: housing for the homeless, scholarships for youth, and support for women escaping abuse. Olivia worked behind the scenes, meeting with leaders, persuading donors, and rewriting policies with a sharpness Ethan never knew she possessed. She didn't need her name on plaques or in speeches. Her power lay in the change she sparked, not in the recognition. The guest list for the Aurora Foundation's annual gala? Olivia approved every name, each detail scrutinized under her keen gaze. Ethan Caldwell's name struck from the list? That was her decision, not born of resentment or spite, but of a simple truth: he was no longer worthy. Olivia didn't act out of hatred. She acted because she'd learned to value herself above what he once thought of her. She didn't need to diminish him to elevate herself. She only needed to stand tall, and the world would see who truly held power. On the night of the gala, as Olivia stepped onto the stage, spotlights bathed her, making her the heart of the resplendent room. Her black silk gown hugged her frame, understated yet radiating undeniable elegance. The applause thundered, not polite but heartfelt, a chorus celebrating her presence. Olivia stood there, her eyes calm yet blazing, her voice warm and steady as she shared the foundation's vision. She didn't mention Ethan, didn't unearth the past. She spoke only of the future, of communities to be uplifted, of dreams to be given wings. In that moment, beneath the radiant light and ceaseless applause, Olivia knew she had reclaimed her voice, a voice once stifled by years in Ethan's shadow. She didn't need a penthouse or lavish parties to define her. Each morning, as dawn's light poured through her windows, Olivia felt an inner strength, not the strength of vengeance, but of freedom. She had rebuilt her life, brick by brick, not to prove Ethan wrong, but to remind herself she was always right. And as she stood on that stage, with the world listening, she wasn't just Olivia Monroe, the ex-wife left behind. She was a force, a smoldering flame that couldn't be extinguished, a woman who had turned pain into power and silence into strength. In her small apartment, Olivia hung a painting she'd created in her darkest days, an abstract portrait of herself with bold lines and vibrant colors. It wasn't a relic of the past, but a reminder of the journey she'd traveled. Each day, she looked at it and smiled, not for triumph over Ethan, but for conquering herself. And somewhere, in the gala's glow, amid the resounding applause, Olivia knew she hadn't just found her voice. She had made the world listen. As dawn's light pierced through Manhattan's towering skyscrapers, the city awoke with a relentless rhythm. But Ethan Caldwell felt left behind. Just one night ago, he stood on the red carpet of the Aurora Foundation's gala, certain he was the center of every gaze. Now, as sunlight flooded his opulent penthouse, it only highlighted the emptiness of a space that was once his throne. Ethan sat motionless in a leather chair, his eyes vacant, as if his soul had been drained by the moment the glass door shut before him, and Olivia Monroe's cold nod from the balcony seared itself into his mind. The next day, social media erupted like an uncontrollable storm. Hashtags like #CaldwellCrash and #Galagate spread at breakneck speed, dominating every platform from Twitter to Instagram. A brief 10-second video became a sensation across New York. In it, Ethan stood silently outside the Waldorf Astoria's doors, hands in pockets, his gaze fixed on Olivia, who shone inside the ballroom, her warm voice resonating through the microphone, captivating every eye. The flawless camera angle, almost staged, turned the moment into an icon. The man, once king of the city, now cast out from the very stage he used to rule. Comments flooded in, sharp and merciless. "When your ex-wife owns the whole room!" "From millionaire to outsider in one night!" Each word was a dagger, slicing deeper into Ethan's already fractured pride. He tried to fight back, if only to cling to some shred of control. Grabbing his phone, he dialed Michael Thornton, chairman of the Aurora Foundation's board, hoping for an explanation or a chance to fix the debacle. But only the assistant's detached voice answered. "Mr. Thornton is unavailable." He called again, this time to the PR firm that had crafted his invincible image. "We need a statement," he said, his voice hoarse with desperation. "Say I chose not to attend due to a scheduling conflict." The woman on the line hesitated, then responded with caution. "Mr. Caldwell, the images of you at the door are everywhere. That story won't hold." Ethan hung up, his hands trembling, feeling as though the world was turning its back on him. Ethan's reputation, built over decades through multi-million-dollar deals and powerful handshakes, vanished like smoke. Invitations to elite events, once overflowing his inbox, stopped coming. Business partners quietly withdrew from projects, citing vague reasons about strategic misalignment. A real estate development firm, where he was a major shareholder, emailed to cancel their contract, citing conflicts in brand values. The word values echoed in his mind like a curse, a reminder that he'd lost more than money. He'd lost respect, something no amount of wealth could buy. Sophia Laurent, once the radiant light beside him, couldn't bear the humiliation. By noon, she packed her belongings, her red sequined gown stuffed hastily into a suitcase, a relic of a shattered dream. "I didn't sign up to be a laughingstock," she said, her voice icy, her high heels clicking sharply on the marble floor as she dragged her bag to the door. Ethan sat silent, offering no protest, no plea to stay. He didn't blame her. Sophia had been honest about her ambitions, always craving power and the spotlight. But now, as Ethan's glow dimmed, she had no reason to remain. The door slammed shut behind her, leaving the penthouse hollow, its echo a final declaration of his solitude. Ethan rose, walking slowly to the bookshelf where gleaming awards once stood as proof of his invincibility. Crystal trophies etched with his name, medals from business magazines, now sat lifeless, stripped of meaning. He touched one, his fingers grazing the inscription Innovator of the Year, but the pride it once sparked was gone. He opened a drawer, pulling out an old photo, forgotten among papers. It was Olivia, captured in a moment of past joy, her smile radiant, her eyes sparkling as if the world rested in her hands. He stared at it, his heart heavy. Too late, he realized he hadn't just lost her. He'd lost himself, the version of Ethan she once trusted, once loved. He sank back into the chair, the photo still in hand, his gaze drifting to the window. The city outside sparkled, its skyscrapers glinting in the sun, but that light no longer shone for him. The honking cars, the frenetic pulse of Manhattan, all carried on without him. Ethan felt like a dethroned king, exiled from a kingdom he thought impregnable. Olivia, with a single, potent nod, had stripped away not just his spotlight, but the story he'd told himself. As social media churned with tales of his downfall, Ethan sat alone in the frigid penthouse, realizing he was no longer the center of any stage. The city still glowed, but it had crowned a new queen, and she didn't need to look back to affirm her victory. While Ethan Caldwell sank into the cold shadows of his desolate penthouse, where the glow of Manhattan skyscrapers only deepened his loneliness, Olivia Monroe stepped into the light, not to flaunt, but to shine in her own profound way. One morning, days after the fateful gala, she appeared in an interview on a prestigious television network, seated before a simple yet elegant backdrop, her eyes calm, yet ablaze with quiet fire. Her voice, gentle as a spring breeze, carried the unyielding strength of a mountain. She didn't mention Ethan, didn't unearth the scars of a past betrayal that once shattered her heart. Instead, she spoke of the future, of communities lifted by the Aurora Foundation, of young women she inspired to rise and claim their worth. Olivia, dressed in a white silk blouse and a navy pencil skirt, radiated in effortless elegance. She shared stories of educational programs opening doors for children in slums, of safe houses built for women fleeing violence, and of her vision for a world where justice is not just a promise, but a reality. "Power isn't about shouting the loudest," she said, her voice deliberate, each word etched into the air. "It's about standing firm, even when no one sees you." Those words, simple yet profound, spread like wildfire across social media, quoted in articles, printed on posters, and became a symbol of quiet resilience. They weren't just words. They were Olivia's portrait, a woman who transformed pain into strength, silence into power. In his penthouse, Ethan sat in darkness, curtains drawn to block the morning light. The blue glow of the television screen was the room's only illumination, casting shadows across his face, now etched with exhaustion and awakening. He watched Olivia's interview, his hands gripping the leather chair, not with anger or bitterness, but with stillness. For the first time in years, he truly heard her. Her voice, though miles away through the screen, held a strange magnetism, soft yet commanding, like the way she stood on the gala stage, captivating the room without effort. Ethan didn't cry, didn't pound the walls or shout to vent his rage. He simply sat, letting her words sink in, like droplets melting the icy barrier around his heart. As the interview ended, Olivia offered a faint smile, not boastful but brimming with peace. The camera panned away, and Ethan switched off the TV, plunging the room into silence. He stood, walking to the window, and for the first time in days, he pulled back the curtains. Morning light flooded in, sharp and unrelenting, illuminating the crystal awards on the shelf, now mere relics of a faded glory. He opened the window, letting Manhattan's cool air rush in, carrying the scent of pavement and distant car horns. For the first time, Ethan felt small, like a speck in the city's vast universe. Yet in that smallness, he sensed a spark of freedom, a space to start anew, though he didn't yet know how. Olivia didn't need revenge. She didn't need to diminish Ethan to elevate herself. She had triumphed, not by defeating him, but by becoming the best version of herself. Every step she took, from her cozy apartment to the gala stage, from quiet meetings to the heart-stirring interview, was proof of the power of perseverance and dignity. She'd built a new empire, not on glamour or powerful handshakes, but on compassion and vision. And while the world sang her praises, Olivia remained humble, her gaze always forward, never looking back. Ethan, standing by the window, took a deep breath, feeling the city's air fill his lungs. He thought of Olivia, of her nod on the balcony, of her voice in the interview. He began to understand, belatedly, that to rise again, he must face himself, not the proud king who once ruled Manhattan, but a man ready to own his mistakes and find meaning in stillness. He didn't know where the road ahead would lead, but for the first time, he felt he could begin, not by reclaiming glory, but by nodding to himself, as Olivia had done.